Good morning, YouTube. Starting another session in my Deep House series, this time about bass sound design. This is going to be another live session. Work now with the 16 odd Deep House bass lines that I created and start creating some bass sounds around them and use them as a little example to just kind of spur on some thinking about what some of these basses should sound like or could sound like, so that I've got some interesting examples and ideas for when I'm going to start a new bass house, new deep house track. I said bass house on one of the other sessions the other morning. I meant deep house track. I was talking about bass for deep house. I got bass house. So sorry about that, but it's all good. All good. So for those of you just joining, the short answer is we've been designing bass lines that are example bass lines for deep house tracks. That's kind of one of my things lately. I've been really looking at the deep house genre. I like the musicality of deep house. I like the soulfulness of deep house. And I think it gives you an opportunity to have both electronic music, but also have music that has some, traditional soul groove and feel to it. Which is something that's important to me. I think that sort of suits the way I like to make music, and it suits the music I like to listen to. So, as a quick overview, we won't spend too much time on all these different variations. We started with some simple stuff, and worked a lot with just the repeating sort of almost pedal patterns in the bottom. And had ideas like this just be as the bass, which they developed over time. Now, also worked with a developing bass deep house sound. So this is what it kind of started with, which is a little bit, just a traditional saw wave with some stuff on it to make it filter down a little bit, which I don't think is terrible, but is a little too fuzzy for me. Then this is a more clean FM kind of tube sound, where you've got some pulse, some square wave in there, so that it's coming out with that sort of traditional tube-ish sound, if you will, which I happen to like personally. But you can also have too much of that pretty easily, and it gets into territory where it sounds a little cheesy pretty quick. So you got to be careful with it. Then we modded it up a little bit to take a little bit of that tube out, put a little bit more of the resonance back into it. And this has got several layers to it. I don't think this one's terrible. I think that's alright. And then I started playing with it there. This one's not much different. There's just a subtle shift in the amount of resonance on that one. And this is going to be Modbase 2. You can hear in the track there's now a fair amount more of upper partial. Let me just grab a EQ here. This in particular, right here, you can hear this nice and clear on this one. Now, the value of that, of course, is that on small speakers, that helps the bass cut through a little bit. But it also presents an EQing and mixing challenge down the road, where you got to make sure that you're not clashing with other instruments that are in this upper partials. Ultimately, I was working with this, which is very similar, but I think it's got a little bit more punch to it. It's also much quieter. Now, not a whole lot different between that one and the last one. In fact, I probably will find that there's just some very, very subtle differences I made on the serum patches there. And you can see that I'm actually running two different serums plus this, and this is where that fuzz is coming from. Yeah, look, there's actually very little of that. Oh, I gotta play that track. There we go. All right, let's come back over here. All right, now let's come in here and start modding this up. Now, I think that we can start with, you know what I'm going to start with is a wave table. I like Wavetable a lot. I think they've done a nice job with Wavetable. And we want something that's got a decent amount of partials in it, but also has that FM tubey sound. Then we're buried in it a little bit. You can hear there's a lot of high end in this one. Yeah, not the greatest. To me, what kind of exemplifies the deep house sound in the bass is really that kind of almost signy cleanliness to the sound, with just a little bit of resonance in it, so that it isn't pure signy, and a touch of the FM sound to it. Like I think that the deep house often has that a little bit of that FM sound to it. Now, one of the things I do love about the update in 11 are the presets that come with the macro keys, so that you can more or less hear a whole group. Like, for example, this is kind of interesting. This has got a fair amount of the FM sound to it. Effects are just a touch too heavy. Now let's get in here and see what this looks like. This is a pretty stacked sound that they've got cooking here. I kind of like that fifth overtone that's sitting on top. It's a pretty complex little patch they've got pulled in here. Alright, so that's kind of interesting. Alright, so I don't think that one's terrible. It might be a good starting point. Let's see. I used to play a Jupiter many years ago. Love the Jupiter. Let's see. There's some heavy reverb on there. We could have a almost acidy house type sound. So like sounds like this, I often listen very carefully too, because that core center wave that's going on in the center's kind of got a cool sound to it. You could end up with a oh, that's the wrong one. You could end up, you know, with just that central piece. I was pointing to the wrong thing there when I had it on. Yeah, you can see here. Man, no, that's no good. Let's see. That could be interesting. Now, I will often start with presets, but you usually modify them heavily. Now, not everyone likes to start with presets. Everyone likes, you know, many people like to start from scratch, which can be fine. Ooh, that's a little rough, huh? All right, let's see. In fact, let's do that. Let's start from scratch. See if I can't gin up something that's got a the right kind of sound for us here. So probably want something that's got a little bit of resonance to it, but not a lot. And we'll probably do two pieces of the bass, both the sub and the not. So I'll leave the sub off for now, just to try to create the sound. Let's use some drive on the filter. I don't want it to ring out too much. I only want it to ring a little bit, because it should have a nice little knock at the top, right? Just a little bit of that. Let's throw Alright, sometimes you get a click when you go with mono, because you might have some notes that overlap. Not a big fan of clicks. Okay. Tell you what. Now I think what we need is, a little elephant. info movement on our waveform. Pretty relatively subtle. Let's go to oscillator 2 position. Let's there's some high end and probably filter out. Oh, trigger off. Let that. Really want is we just want a little bit of that to add a little flavor at the top. Go. Now see, that's a little too much. Take a super quick break to take care of one of my dogs. I will be right back. Interesting. So I've been here talking away and didn't realize that I had messed up there and not changed the screen back. Sorry about that. So all those changes you probably didn't hear. It was probably just me randomly muttering. So I was designing this bass instrument right here, which is mostly based off of a wavetable with some saturator and chorus and some few other components to it here. And I was just saying that I was going to go ahead and maybe tune up this kick a little bit so that I had something a little more deep housey sounding. Now I usually like to find some kick that's got a house type feel, and I usually end up playing with the sustain and depth of it. Sounds like my bass is a little loud. So this is a failed stream, given that I just left you guys with a whole bunch of dead air. I apologize for that. For anybody who's watching this on the replay, obviously, I hope that you skipped all the dead space. I'll probably go back and edit this so that it doesn't have that dead space in it, but we'll figure that out. Alright, so I kind of like where this one sits. A little bit long, I think, but I want it to be quite full, so. What I love about Big Kick is that it tells you exactly how many 16th notes the kick is sitting on. Okay, I don't mind where that one's sitting at all. Bring that back down a little bit. One of the things I will also do is you can see that I've actually cut the lows already. So, you know, these cuts are sitting at 23, 24, and I try to make sure that that's relatively clean. But one of the other things that you got with these is you hear, you know, people split the basses a lot, so you'll end up with just a sine wave sitting down at the bottom, which I completely understand and completely makes sense. But sometimes I will also go ahead and just throw a multiband on it and take everything, say sub 80, and just compress it tremendously so that it's nice and stable, and then coming right off your bass patch, you've effectively got it separated into two pieces at that point. You've got a very compressed low end that's going to be nice and stable and probably pretty easy to balance into the mix, and then you've got your top end, which can be doing whatever it wants, you know, and sitting maybe a little bit wider in the stereo field and have a little bit more dynamics to it, which is, you know, helps the bass cut through and it helps the bass sound interesting as well. So it looks like I've got about 10 dB of cut there, so let's see where this sits. Now I may later go ahead and still separate out the bass and drop a sine down below just to mimic that bass line, but I like to also do this because it helps them with some consistency of the bass and making sure it sits. Now I kind of like the way that's got that little twinge of FM sound to it. You can hear that FM kind of moving around on the top in the resonance. Now compare that to ultimately I don't think I like that little resonance that I threw in there. So this is the main one I've been working off, and then this is the one we designed this morning. Now, what I really would like to see, now I also like to play around and see what happens when I take this one. How about if we I realize I could have gone and just changed the amount that the map is, but I like to just get in, change it up directly. And what I'm doing here is just trying to get the attack of this one. So I just get the little bite on the front end. In fact, I probably could even take this one. Let's see what we got. I don't like that click that I'm getting there, so let's just take an 8, put it behind. There's the click. So there it is without it. And you can hear it's got a pretty soft front end. If I add this in, I just get a little bit more punch out of that front end. Call this Punchy FM. I'll save you. All right, so we got that one. Now we'll compare that. Now let's also affect this one up about the same. Okay, so now it's obviously a lot softer than this one. A little bit less of the gunk sound at the beginning, which I happen to like that a lot, the way that one hits. But this could also be a nice one for something that maybe doesn't move quite as fast, maybe not as many 16ths. For example, something along those lines. All right, so if you've been here with me, thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's great to have you come along. I apologize for the dead space in the middle. I had to step away and help one of my dogs, and when I came back, forgot to change the screen and was sitting there just jabbering away without throwing off the sound. So I apologize for that, but thanks for being with me, and you guys have a great day. Talk to you.